Hey guys, we got a developer from Creative Assembly, from Total Warhammer. Yep, just tell us some basic stuff about Total Warhammer.
Okay. Where to start? There's so much to say. So yeah, I guess the basic explanation for the game is it's all the kind of strategic depth and epic kind of explosive battlefield action that you'd expect from a Total War game, but we've taken all the kind of beautiful, rich backstory and narrative of the Warhammer universe and basically smashed the two together. So we've got kind of epic fantasy strategy game in which players won't just be kind of having big battles with soldiers. They'll be having battles with soldiers and giant spiders and giants and flying creatures, and there'll be spells flying about all over the place. So it's a bit of a departure from what we normally do with our historical games, and it's a hell of a lot of fun, frankly, because the gloves are off. We get to do some really fantastical, amazing stuff that working in a historical context doesn't necessarily let you do. So.
How did it come together with Total War and Warhammer, these two worlds?
Kind of, it's a bit of a cheesy thing to say, but it is kind of a match made in heaven, because in Warhammer, everything leads to war. In Warhammer, it's a battle game, and it's based on almost medieval style or ancient battle style rank and file formations with extra fun stuff thrown in, like magic users and giant monsters and flying machines and flying monsters and things like that. So it really it's kind of a perfect fit for our battles, because that's what we do. We do artillery, we do rank and file formations, and now we're learning to do big monsters and spells and things as well. So it, thematically, on a kind of mechanical level, it's a really, really great fit for what we do anyway. And of course, there's so much different stuff in Warhammer. That's where the fun really comes into it, because we're learning to make the armies play in completely different ways, both on the battlefield and in the campaign game as well. So you play as the Empire. It's going to be an incredibly different gameplay experience to playing as the Greenskins. They just work in different ways. They are literally different races. To the point, we stop calling them factions now. Like we used to talk about, the Egyptian faction or the Roman faction in the ancient world game. These are different races. They are vastly different in gameplay terms, and their abilities and what they can do and their strengths and weaknesses.
So can you tell us? We saw some alpha gameplay. Can you tell us some of the classes you were playing on integrating in the game?
Yeah, well, the kind of different unit types. Yeah, so yeah, you have your basic kind of rank and file infantry, and all units will have that to some degree. Whether it's and the army you're playing as, the race you're playing as, will dictate the quality and kind of combat abilities and those things. You just have to look at pick up one Warhammer tabletop rulebook and another Warhammer tabletop rulebook, and we're taking exactly what's in those books and making them reality. So again, it just comes back to playing as the Greenskins is going to feel incredibly different to playing as the Empire or the Dwarfs or the Vampire Council, one of the other races, because they're designed to bring variety. They're designed to play in different ways and be lots of fun, and that's all. We're applying what we do with the historical games in terms of the authenticity and the research that we do. We're applying our regular process that we've always done to Warhammer, and we're just bringing out all that variety and difference and all those different unit types into the game. And we still have, we have cavalry, and we have larger creatures. We've had elephants in battle before, but obviously an elephant is very, very different from a giant spider and a Ragnarok. So that brings its own challenges. How does that fight? How does it fight multiple units? What's its strengths and weaknesses? And that's all the stuff. That's all the kind of interesting challenges we're kind of working out at the moment. Getting everything balanced. So it all works together in a nice concert on the battlefield.
Can you tell us something about your plans with single player, multiplayer, story, or?
Yeah, so in single player, it's like a traditional Total War game. You'll have a grand scale campaign game, which is about conquest of the map and achieving your objectives across a large campaign map. And the way that works and the way you go about that will be very different according to your race. So the Empire, for example, they're humans, and you look at them, they look like medieval warriors. They've got plate armor and chainmail and kind of flouncy costumes, and you know, like they've got uniforms, yeah, and they're much more traditional in the campaign game side of things. So they're very much more focused on diplomacy and politics and uniting the disparate human factions into a mighty empire. You know, whereas you play as the greenskins, and you know what, they're not so, you know, they can do diplomacy, but they don't really like anybody. So it's going to be really hard to do any diplomacy with them. And by the same token, you know, orcs don't really want to sit there and carefully manage tax rates. You know, they're not really interested. They just want to go out and fight. So we've got mechanics in the game that drive the player to constantly be in war with the greenskins, and they will benefit from that. They will, you know, they'll build up momentum to the point where you can kick off a war, which is like a grand call to arms from the war boss, and new armies will rise, new war bosses will rise to join your cause, and then you've got these forces where you can kind of sweep across the landscape, you know, until you kind of, your momentum for that runs out, and you kind of, and then you start again, you know. So the gameplay style is very different in the campaign game. The same goes for every race. They all play in ways that are appropriate to those races. And multiplayer, we've got you know, the same level of multiplayer that we've had in sort of Rome 2 and Attila, so co-op and competitive head-to-head battles as well. So yeah, people can certainly play multiplayer battles. You know, build your perfect army, greenskin army, and face it off against somebody else's.
What release date are you aiming for? Or?
So 2016. We haven't got a date in mind yet, but you know, we're still building it. So, but at some point next year.
What's the most difficult point to integrate the worlds from Total War to Warhammer, or combining?
Yeah, that's interesting. So one of the big challenges, I suppose, is, you know, translating a tabletop turn-based game into, you know, a real-time system. Right? We cannot take the mechanics that are existing in a tabletop game and plug them into our game. It just doesn't work. It doesn't. You know, they're very, very different things. So our challenge is to retain that flavour and all the important kind of factors of Warhammer and translate them into systems that work in our game and ultimately achieve the same results. And I'll give you an example. So magic is obviously big in Warhammer. We've never done that before, so that's the thing. So magic is a different thing. You know, it's new for Total War. And in the tabletop game, you have this concept of the winds of magic. So, you know, depending when a spellcaster goes to cast a spell, you have to roll some dice to see how much kind of magical energy he has to play with, how strong the winds of magic are blowing around him, so he can plop down that power and cast a spell. And that can wax and wane. You know, you could get a really low dice roll and you're like, oh, I can only cast this little spell. Or you could get a really high dice roll and go, right, excellent, right, I'm going to cast this first, then this, and, you know. So we have a similar, we have, you know, the same concept, but it works in a slightly different way. So the way we've kind of worked out is, so for starts, where you are in the world, when you've got a battle, that's occurring obviously in a place on the campaign map, right? And where you are on the campaign map, there's areas where the winds of magic wax away. So it might, you know, up north near the Chaos Wastes, like there's a lot of wild energy in the air, right? So you're probably going to have more energy, some magical energy to play with from turn to turn, from you know, throughout the course of the battle, I should say. So you might be able to cast more spells. You're more likely to have a higher starting level of magic that your spellcasters can cast from. Whereas you go to another part of the world, chances are you'll start at a lower level and you'll have less. That battle will be less dominated by magic. But there's a random element to it too. So, you know, you might start with almost no magic to play with at all. You're like, pull my spellcasters to the back a bit and focus on tactics, focus on my battlefield forces. So these sort of things are all designed to help balance the game, obviously, but also to remain authentic to what's in Warhammer. So that's, going back to your original question, that's kind of one of the key challenges, is to find ways of making those systems that are in the tabletop game work in authentic, flavourful, way that people are going to get. People understand that from Warhammer, from the tabletop game. So it's going to work in a way that seems sensible to people in a real-time manner. So yeah, that's like an ongoing challenge which we're working on. So.
Do you got something you really want to tell the fans about the game?
I don't know really. I could say all the obvious stuff, like it's going to be absolutely epic and it's going to be spectacular. But I think at the end of the day, it's at heart it's a total war game. It's about grand campaign conquest in lots of different ways according to which faction you play. But we're just with a new level of spectacle on the battlefield, with creatures that are creatures that are the size of a house, right? That's going to be an interesting bunch of toys for Total War players to get their teeth into. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks for the interview.